My whole family has suffered. I would die for a united Ireland.
It's a preview of a new FX limited series, Say Nothing, which tells the true story of the bitter conflict that took place in Northern Ireland back in the 1970s. The series is based on a book by Dorchester native Patrick Radden Keefe, an award-winning staff writer at The New Yorker, as well as a New York Times best-selling author. I had the pleasure of speaking with Keefe about the new series based on his book and what he is hoping viewers will take from it.
Well, Patrick Radden Keefe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. This is very exciting. We want to start by just asking you about your book, Say Nothing, and really why you wanted to write about the time period in Ireland, of course, known as the Troubles.
So I grew up in Boston, and I grew up in Dorchester in an Irish-American family, and I had a kind of rough sense of the Troubles and what they meant, but I never really understood the ins and outs of them. And in 2013, this woman, Dolores Price, died. And I read her obituary, and she had been the first woman to join the IRA as a frontline soldier in the early 1970s. She joined with her sister, Marion. And I was just really intrigued by the story of her life. I think I had thought of the Troubles as a very male story. And so I was just intrigued to learn that there had been this woman, this pair of famous women in the IRA. And also that she looked back in later years on some of the things she did when she was young with some misgivings. And that was interesting to me, too. The idea of people who are young political radicals who take up political violence. But then how do they feel about that when they become middle-aged, when the conflict moves on, when they have children of their own?
Patrick, what was it like to get the stories and get the historical context for this? Because, you know, it's called Say Nothing, and it's called that for a reason because people don't like to talk about it. And so was that difficult in kind of learning about this and trying to do the research for it?
It was. It took a long time. So it was a 4-year process writing the book, and I made 7 trips to Northern Ireland, and I was just kind of knocking on doors. And, you know, one of the advantages I find in this work is if you keep coming back, slowly you build up trust. And that's what happened. And I think that ultimately people have stories to tell. You know, they've gone through these very traumatic events, and I think a lot of the time you can find a way to get them to talk about it. And it can be quite cathartic for people to talk about this kind of history.
Did you ever, when you were writing the book, think that this could become something that would end up on TV in a series?
It's funny, I try to just kind of focus on the thing in front of me, so I never gave it any thought. When the book was done, I got approached by a producer named Brad Simpson, and he was somebody I knew in Hollywood, but he and his partner had made The People vs. O.J. Simpson, the FX show, which I thought was really good. And so when they came to me and said, we think you could do this as a limited series, we want you to come on board as a producer and work with us to make sure that we get it right, that was hard to say no to.
Yeah, and what was that experience like for you? I'm assuming that's the first time you've done that.
It was very different, I'll tell you. You know, being a writer, when you're sort of there in your home office, you've got control of every word. It's very different to be a part of a big production that hundreds of people are involved in with a 9-month shoot. You know, it's a big thing. And it meant a lot to me to be a voice in the room. I had to learn how to kind of collaborate, you know, and be a part of a big ship like that. But the good news is that after 5 years of getting the thing made, I think it's come out really brilliantly, and I'm really proud of the results and excited for people to see it.
What do you want people to take away or maybe learn from this series?
Well, I think it's an interesting story, right? Because on the one hand, you look at it and it's about the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It feels like a very kind of foreign time and place in history. On the other hand, it's about a really divided society in which there are all these animosities. There's tribalism. People feel like they can't really communicate anymore or find political common ground. And in the case of the Troubles, what happened was the whole society kind of hopped the rails. And by the early 1970s, people are killing each other in the streets. I don't think that's where we're going to go. I think it's a cautionary tale, though, about what can happen in a society, how far things can go, how dystopian it can get. And for that reason, I think it's interesting. And it's also about a conflict that ends. You know, the Troubles came to an end in the late 1990s. And so it's telling that whole story, but doing so really in the form of a thriller, which is what the show is. It's kind of a thriller that turns into a tragedy.
Yes, and from that unique female perspective, too, which I love. I can't wait to watch it. It's my new winter binge show that I'm going to be watching. Yes, Patrick Radden Keefe, Dorchester native, New York Times bestselling author, and an award-winning writer at The New Yorker. Thanks so much for chatting with us. Say Nothing is streaming now on Hulu.